Welcome to Ripple Effects, Travelers with Disabilities Abroad, brought to you by the National Clearinghouse on Disability and Exchange, a project sponsored by the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs and administered by Mobility International USA. We know that international exchange can influence personal and professional development. It can enhance one's confidence and skill sets, broaden one's perspective, and shape one's educational path. It can also influence job choices and career opportunities. Let's find out how. For this season of Ripple Effects, we hear the stories of international exchange alumni with disabilities and how their programs relate to their careers. This is part of a new initiative from the Clearinghouse called #LifeAfterExchange. I'm Justin Harford, a project coordinator with Mobility International USA and your host for Ripple Effects. When Angelique Forbes-Pratt, who was a wheelchair rider, competed at the international level in the Paralympics, she noticed that the majority of those with whom she was competing were from so-called developed countries like Britain, Australia, and the United States, while at the same time, people from so-called developing countries like Zambia, Bermuda, and India, from where she was adopted as a child, were absent. Now, Angelie's mission is to bring the Paralympics and other athletic opportunities to people with disabilities from around the world. So, Angelie, one part of your story that really inspires me is that as a student in high school, I really didn't have amazing access to physical education, and that's kind of been part of your mission.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. A very important part of my mission.
Could you tell us what about some of the international work that you've been doing lately as far as kind of developing opportunities for people with disabilities in other countries to compete in the Paralympics?
Certainly. So one of the really amazing platforms with being a U.S. Paralympic athlete has also been able to carry that torch forward and to help to develop Paralympic sport programs in other countries. And to me, my fundamental view is that if everybody is capable of leading active, healthy lifestyles, and maybe that can lead to competitive sport, if so, great. But for persons with disabilities, especially in some of these countries, just to be able to be out and about in society and to be able to be active with a particular sport can help to keep individuals out of the hospital and keep down secondary infections and all of these other, secondary complications that often can arise when you have a disability.
Absolutely. For me, I had to learn that lesson a little later in life when I started working and started to have all kinds of repetitive stress injury issues. And now that has been my motivator to really get my physical education going.
Right.
But you're as far I think a 2011 world champion in wheelchair racing 200 yards. And you have a couple of bronze medals, I believe, from China. You're the perfect person, it sounds almost, to be taking this on. I wonder if you could tell us, though, that experience that you have in the Paralympics and how that all came to be.
Sure. So for me, yes, my athletic successes are certainly something that I'm very proud of. Lots of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak, went into those medals, and lots of coaches and supportive individuals along the way. But for me, it was also this other side of this, of being in the Paralympic Village and realizing that there were other individuals, other athletes from other countries who don't necessarily always have the same access to sport, the same access to amazing coaching staff, the same type access to equipment that we're fortunate to have here in the United States. And that was something that from the time that I started competing on the world stage, I became very, very aware of. And I'm not sure whether that awareness was just something about, who I am in terms of that really resonating with me, because I'm also adopted from India. And so I think that it definitely kind of struck a chord at a personal level as well, which is why this has become a part of my mission.
Like you basically, you're saying that you started competing on the world stage in the Paralympics and you noticed that there was a discrepancy between people from different countries who were competing?
Yes. So based on where it was that you lived in the world, you may have a greater opportunity or access to reach the Paralympic Games level. Some countries didn't even have what's called a National Paralympic Committee, which every country needs in order to field a team at the games. You have to have some organization and some structure in place so that the International Paralympic Committee knows that you're a legitimate country, so to speak. And there's process that all countries have to go through, and it is very similar on the Olympic side too. But if you've never gone through that process, then that opportunity in and of itself fundamentally isn't at the table for certain individuals.
Wow. And so you set it out to make your goal to go and work in developing countries to help get Paralympic committees going so people could compete from those countries.
Yep. So it's multifaceted, right? So part of it is certainly being able to establish a Paralympic committee. Part of it is being able to find the athletes who want to participate in Paralympic sport. And then it's also finding coaches who are able to coach and to support athletes who want to go through that trajectory. And in the world of adaptive sport, also finding and locating equipment to make those dreams a reality. So it's definitely multi-tiered.
A lot of moving parts there.
Yeah.
But that process, though, you have an interesting story, though, because in that process, you eventually did get to see kind of the fruits of your labor when you competed in 2012, right?
Yes. So a little bit of backstory is that as of now, I have been involved in this type of developmental work in Bermuda, Ghana, India, and most recently Zambia. And one of the most rewarding things was actually from the London 2012 Paralympic Games. So in terms of how the games went for me personally, athletically, I was not performing quite at the level that I was hoping to going into those games because of some health complications and so forth. But for me, one of the biggest takeaways and really one of the, I would say, career defining moments for me was being there at the London 2012 Games and on the start line of all of my races, the 100 meters, 200 meters, and 400 meters, the finals actually for all of those races. Not only was I there on that starting line, but there was also an athlete from Bermuda as well as an athlete from Ghana in the same track classification who were my direct competitors actually for those events. And I played a very small role in helping to get those athletes, to that starting line. But the fact that they qualified, had their countries supporting them, and that they were there and had met the same rigorous qualification standards that I had to meet as well, was just phenomenal.
Wow. And I think the other interesting thing, I kind of mentioned at the beginning and didn't really explain it, but, your story at the beginning, a lot of people would think that you had amazing access to physical education, but that wasn't really true. Could you tell us about what it was like for you getting to the point where you could compete in the Paralympics at the world level?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You would think that I would have come from a place or a school district that really supported, not just physical education, but also sports. But unfortunately, that was not the case. I was actually banned from participating in phys ed from the 5th grade on because according to the school district, I was a danger to the other students. And that certainly didn't sit so well with me. I'm not going to lie. And it was a combination, though, of issues like that, as well as just basic fundamental access to English class or chemistry class that actually led me as a 14-year-old to sue my school district in federal court on discrimination on the basis of disability. So it was definitely a rocky road there for a bit.
So it got pretty bad, but you so your experience was. Where did you learn then? Where did you get access to physical education, the training that you needed?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate that there was a Saturday sports group for children with disabilities. It was unfortunately about an hour away from my parents' house, so that was a big commitment on the part of my parents, and at very young age figuring out carpool arrangements and all of that in order to make that a priority to allow me to get to try every sport that was out there and to get to experience that. But I was very fortunate that it was through local disability community-based organizations that I was able to try not just wheelchair racing, but also downhill skiing and tennis and basketball, sled hockey, pretty much you name it. And I had a chance to at least try it once. It was more so the wheelchair racing and the downhill skiing that I really enjoyed from a competitive standpoint.
What was it like in other countries for people with disabilities wanting to get fit and access physical ed?
Yeah. So, I think every country is different, and every country kind of comes with its unique challenges and unique opportunities. I will say that one of the things that was striking to me that I've seen in several of the countries that I've been in is kind of this concept of interdependence. So often, especially in the disability community here in the United States, we focus so much on independence, and we think about what is it that individuals can be able to achieve by themselves on their own, completely, separate from assistance from others and so forth. But I really think that we need to reframe that conversation to be more about interdependence. And how is it that, sure, you as an individual can have a voice and agency and a say in what those choices are about your life, and perhaps like the sport that you want to participate in, or the school you want to go to, or what it is you want to study. Absolutely. But that we can rely on assistance from others, not as a negative thing, but rather as supports. It's supports in place that individuals may need in order to achieve those goals. And I think that was a really striking thing for me to witness. And like I said, in several of those countries, Bermuda was a great example, being a very small island nation, only 26 square miles. But to have one athlete who was wanting to push this dream of Paralympic level track and field, to watch not just her family rally behind her and support her, but also the entire island and the community that she had supporting her in those efforts, was just truly remarkable.
So in places like Bermuda, you saw the communities were taking a lot more interest, and like there was more of a collective interest in supporting people with disabilities and making sure that kind of we could be successful.
Yes. And it got the attention of companies and corporations and in terms of sponsorship dollars, and to be able to get that access to that equipment, right? And so
yeah.
When you think about how multifaceted this is, it's by being able to think a little bit more broadly about what that type of support can look like, it also has a tremendous amount of benefit like that. One of the things on the flip side, though, is that one of the challenges in some of these countries is information, right? So they don't have rich histories of community-based disability sport programs, for example. Like there's not because they haven't done this before, right? But to me, knowledge is a fairly easy gap to fill, and doesn't take a whole lot of resources to fill that gap.
Yeah, no, and especially when you have the community will there, it's just a matter of education.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's. I actually like that example, because whenever it seems like in the disability community in the U.S. we talk about developing countries, it's usually to talk about how behind us they are, or the challenges, I guess I should say. And we don't always stop and think about what are the advantages. And there really are advantages. And there really are things that developing countries have going for them that, we got to keep in mind. And also, too, when we go out to those countries and work with them on community development projects, that we've got to challenge other people in those communities to keep in mind too, because I've also heard people tell us like, oh, you have so much going for you, there's no way we could ever make it work. And it's not necessarily true.
And I also think too, the other piece to that is in a lot of the countries that I've been in, there's sometimes this notion that, oh, everything must be perfect there in the United States or in America.
Yeah, exactly.
Being a person with a disability. And when I share some of the experiences that I had in high school, it becomes an eye-opening experience. And it's not to say that you're trying to, pit one country against another in terms of where is worse for people with disabilities by any stretch of the imagination, but it's to illustrate the point that no, even in America, we have things that we need to work towards in order to improve the lives and the opportunities for people with disabilities. And I would say right now, even more than ever, even though we're just now celebrating the 27th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, we're still having to fight similar fights, even here in this country.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you about this. And I kind of wonder, just kind of as we close up, if you could just share us some comments about kind of what you're doing now and where you see yourself kind of going in the future.
Sure. So right now I'm an assistant professor at Vanderbilt University. And in that role, I am teaching future school counselors and clinical mental health counselors. So that's, to me, a very important piece, is to make sure that our counselors are aware of disability-related issues and are able to meet the needs of our population here in the United States and beyond. But then the other piece with that is that I get to conduct some of my own research, and I do a lot of work related to disability identity development. And like we talked about too, what is the role that sport may be able to play in helping individuals adjust to or become more strengthen their own identity as a person with a disability. Because sport, for me, really was able to provide me with that access to that community of other people like me. And that's and it's not the only place where you can find other people with disabilities, but it's a kind of a natural people rallying behind something that they love, where some of this can kind of help individuals to adjust to things that might otherwise be very challenging.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Anjali. I appreciate it very much, and we wish you luck in all your endeavors.
Thank you so much. It was great talking with you today.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes and consider sharing us with your networks. Also, let us know what you think at Twitter @MobilityINTL or Facebook, Mobility International USA, using the hashtag LifeAfterExchange. And to learn more about hashtag LifeAfterExchange, go to miusa.org.